Okay, so welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at wood, the wood chapter. Wood, what is it and where does it come from? Okay, so this chapter is relatively straightforward. It's just kind of, I suppose, a baseline knowledge of things like trees and forests. And it's only going to take me about 10 12 minutes to go through it, okay? And it'll just be a couple of notes on it. So I suppose it's important to realise that wood is a natural product. We all know it comes from trees. Different types of wood comes from different types of trees, and you'll see that later on the stage. This chapter is just about getting an idea of generally what is it and where essentially does it come from. Okay, so we have trees. How important are they? And to consider how we benefit from trees every day. Okay, so there's things you see like timber that we get from trees, and then there's other things that happen, I suppose, to do with trees in the environment that you mightn't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis, but are very important for having a healthy lifestyle and living. Alright, so we're going to look at the next slide, and this kind of talks through some of the benefits of trees. Okay, now, so what I want you to do is take down this as the benefits of trees or forests. Okay, so the first benefit, maybe you've learned about this in primary school, is the trees produce oxygen. Okay, so oxygen is very important for animals and humans to live. Okay, and what happens is trees, as a byproduct of being alive, produce oxygen. Now, as a byproduct of us being alive or breathing, we produce carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide in too much quantities is actually very harmful for the environment, which is fantastic in a way that trees use that, because they take or absorb harmful carbon dioxide out of the air and pump back oxygen for us to breathe. So it's a word you mightn't have heard before. It's a symbiotic relationship. It means both things, where both parties involved benefit from it. So we get the oxygen that we need, but we also produce the carbon dioxide for the trees. But the problem arises then when there's so many people being born on the planet and so many trees are getting cut down, that there's an imbalance of the carbon dioxide there. There's going to end up being too much carbon dioxide. Alright, so there's your first two benefits of trees. Alright, you will learn that in primary school. They're renewable, right? So they mightn't be instantly renewable, but if you cut down certain types of trees in, say, a managed forest, you'd be able to replant them again and recut them years later down the line. Alright, so they're somewhat renewable. It's not instant, but it can be done. They're sustainable. Sustainable means that they can replant them. Okay, so you've probably seen maybe before on the Andrex toilet paper ads, for every one tree they cut down, they planted three instead. Alright, so you'll find a lot of companies nowadays do that because they realise the importance of trees towards the environment in terms of global warming and things like that. So replanting has become very popular. So where trees have been cut down, they've been replanted. Fuel. Okay, so some of you might know, some of you mightn't. Maybe some of you have them at home. They are a wood chip burner. So the way your heating works at home, some people actually work theirs with a wood chip burner. So they feed wood pellets essentially. So it's scrap bits of timber squeezed together, and they go into the furnace and they burn and create heat or whatever to power the house. So it's just a different method than using oil. Also, another simple example of fuel is if you have a fire at home. I'm sure some of you have burned sticks at some stage to heat the house. That's another example of trees being used as fuel. Alright, so you learn about that in things like geography as well. You'll see in places like deserts, why they became so deserted, I suppose, is because over years people cut down the trees to burn as fuel, and just sand kind of crept in then. Alright, so fuel is a very big one for trees. A habitat for wildlife. So this is a big one. You'll see in things like forest fires and all when they happen that there's a lot of coverage, maybe in Australia, things like koalas and all dying and their homes being destroyed. So trees or forests in general provide a massive breeding ground for both wildlife and humans. So you think there is tribes that still live in the likes of the Amazon rainforest and places like that. So there's trees are very important to the ecosystem of the earth. Okay, so the ecosystem is where the animals and plants live, and it's a very fine balance. If you start cutting down trees, animals start losing their homes, then they start dying. They start pushing into cities looking for food, and that's when problems start to occur. Okay, so habitat for wildlife. Materials. So if we're cutting up timber in the school, obviously it's been cut down from a tree. We use it for materials for building loads of different stuff. So you're probably sitting on a chair right now that's made somewhat from timber. You're sitting at a desk that's made from some sort of timber material. You probably got up and sat at a kitchen table this morning that's made from some sort of material. So, trees and wood especially is very vital towards everyday life in terms of building materials, constructing houses, anything like that. I suppose really years ago the way people travel around from place to place in terms of actually millions of years ago would have been boats that would have been built and travelled from country to country, and spices and things were traded. You learn all about that in history. But trees over the years have been a massive, massive building material resource in terms of planet Earth. Then food. Alright. In terms of food, there's loads of different types of food comes from different types of trees. First one that always comes to my head is an apple. So if you think about any fruit that comes from a tree, any nuts either, so any acorns, things like that, for birds, seeds some of the birds might eat, different things like that. So there's loads of different types of food. It's mostly probably be fruit and nuts is normally the two from trees, okay? And then there's wood and timber, that's the same thing as materials, alright? So I want you to take down them points. So benefits of trees or forests: they produce oxygen, absorb harmful CO2, renewable, they're sustainable, that's replanting, they're fuel for burn, habitat for wildlife, materials, food, wood and timber. Now, just in terms of trees being renewable, a renewable resource can be replaced naturally over and over in a managed way. Alright, so you'll find, lads, in here in Ireland, a lot of the forests are actually planted. So they're softwood trees, looks like the Christmas trees. If you're driving by the main road, you might see some of them in places. And when they're cut down, the soil and the land is kind of the tree stumps are stripped from it. It's ploughed, it's got ready to be planted again, and then new trees can be planted, alright? So it can be a renewable resource if done correctly, alright? So that's why boards like Coillte in the country manage things like that. So take down that point. A renewable resource can be replaced naturally over and over in a managed way. Now, there's essentially three types of forest, right? So, there's natural forest, managed or planted forest, just exactly what I was mentioning there, and there's tropical rainforest, okay? So, in Ireland, the two we have are the top two. Unfortunately, we don't have tropical rainforest. If we're to ask for an example of a tropical rainforest, it would be the Amazon, okay? So different types of trees grow in each type of forest. So in the natural forest in Ireland, years ago Ireland would have been covered in a lot more forest than what it is, but due to farming, people clearing space for land thousands of years ago, there's not as many trees. But in natural forests in Ireland, you'd find the likes of oak and ash trees and beech and elm. They're softwood trees. In the likes of Wicklow, saying the Glen of the Downs would be an example of a natural forest. Then you've managed or planted forests. So these are government bodies or companies to come in and say, look, we're going to plant a lot of softwood trees here. They rent land off farmers, or they pay farmers money so that they can plant trees on their land. They'll leave them there maybe 20, 25 years. Then they'll come in, saw them down, and they can turn the land back into agriculture or plant more trees. So they're a managed or planted forest. You'll see examples of them alongside the main roads and places. You might see signs like Quaid should have up on them. That means that that's a managed forest. Okay? And then lastly, we have a tropical rainforest. Like y'all know, in the Amazon, that's where different types of hardwoods come, like mahogany, walnut, things like that, teak. You'll see loads of tropical rainforests in the Amazon. If you ever look at documentaries about forests being cut down, places the size of football fields being cut down every 10 minutes or whatever it is, that's always the Amazon rainforest, okay? So there's different types of timber, comes from each. When we get on to different types of hardwood, softwoods, we'll talk more about where they come from, alright? And then the story of a tree is very straightforward. Okay, so first off, in the left hand corner here, it's planted in a sapling, so that's a small tree. The saplings are then planted in outside in a forest or wherever, or in a field. They start to grow, they're then felled, which is cut down. They're then transported from the forest to a sawmill, and they're converted into planks, which are then made into the likes of tables and things like that. So that's the story of a tree, alright? So it goes from planting to growing to felling or sawing, transportation to the conversion or the sawmill, and then it's been able to use, alright? Now, essentially, we'll be learning a lot about this conversion stage here. So where they're sawing up the timber, there's different ways of converting the timber, and we'll be learning about that eventually. You don't need to write that down, alright? So, that's it for the minute, alright? That was just a quick look there, a bit of a basics about trees. We'll be moving on then the next day into types of trees, alright? So all I wanted you to do was just take down those couple of notes, just basically on the benefits of trees and what a renewable resource is, okay? So any questions, just ask me. Thanks.